Hello everyone, welcome back to another art time lapse. Today I am doing another juxtaposition piece named Playing with Blocks. Over the last few months, I've really loved the idea of painting pieces with concepts that are very stark contrast from two extremes. Thus, juxtaposition, which is a word that I'm having trouble pronouncing, and it's also a new word for me. That my husband introduced to me, and I never knew what the word was until more recently. But anyways, my idea is that I'm going to draw two children and they're going to be playing with their version of blocks, because I feel like there is a lot going on in the world nowadays. There are extremes in terms of children who are living in a world where is famine and war is the norm, as opposed to other children, some living in North America, that norm is that they get Legos or they get to play with toys that they can pick up at their local supermarket like Walmart or Target. And it's very different in terms of what play means to them and what safety and what the norm is. So I want to play around with this idea. I'm starting off with gray tone paper, and I've decided to tape it down with some painter tape. This is a mixed media gray tone paper, so if you do plan on doing gray tone paper and adding watercolor to it or gouache, I definitely would recommend using mixed media paper, because it absorbs water better and it doesn't buckle up as much, which is why I've taped it down, so hopefully it won't buckle up as much, because normally I would add like a wash of water over the entire piece. But just because I'm using gray tone paper, I really want to keep the gray tones for the medium tone. I've decided to skip that step. So for gray tone paper, what I focus on are two things. Number one, just adding on highlights, and number two, just adding on shadows. So here you can see I've used some apricot diluted with water to highlight where the two children are going to be, and they're going to be in these very extreme contrast, but at the same time I want the two children to connect with each other in one way or another. Here you can see I'm adding some darker ombre brown color, burnt ombre, for the shadows. I feel like burnt ombre, instead of using like a contrast black, create a softness to the piece, which I still want because I want the idea of these children at play. Here for one side, you can see that I'm adding on these really bright primary colors to mimic the idea of playing blocks, and also like you can think of as like Lego type blocks. So my idea is that there's going to be a child sitting on one side playing with rocks, and just like it could be rummaged through from turmoil, like there might be a war, there might be like destruction, buildings, and they're just playing with rocks that they salvage from a building that's been close to them, and they're using that as playing blocks, and because that's all the toys that they can afford or have access to at the moment, as opposed to another child who's kind of lying on her tummy or his tummy and just like playing with these plastic manufactured blocks that obviously purchased from maybe a child safe toy company. And these are just stark contrasts. The two children are both at play. They are both playing with blocks, but very different versions of blocks. But similarly, I feel like I hope that they are enjoying the process and using their own creativity to build their own world. But at the same time, there's such stark contrast in terms of like the elements that they're using is reflective of the environment that they are surrounded by, that they grow up in. And that's what I want this piece to reflect. And I want the audience that see this piece to think about, like, what are other things that are stark contrast in our lives or maybe in their children's life, and kind of taking a moment to think about that. So that's the whole purpose of the concept for this piece. I just really love the idea of it. I don't know if I fully am able to convey myself and execute it in a way that you will appreciate it, but I think without this medium of YouTube to explain my process, I definitely wouldn't even have the opportunity to explain something like this. And I am really enjoying how YouTube is giving me this platform for me to express myself and my artwork, because normally I don't know how I would garner the audience to explain myself, or even garner myself the I guess the confidence to do it and talk about my artwork, because I don't usually bring my artwork around and show it to everybody that I know. I think some people that I know don't even know that I do artwork on the side, but that's completely okay. But like, I don't go around with my finished piece, show them, and like, let me tell you the story about this piece and this idea that I have. But I do feel that it's important, and it's such an important part of art that I should express something like a story or a message. And I hope this piece provides like some food for thought, like maybe even a start for a conversation. I don't know where that conversation will lead you or lead myself when I am talking it out with someone, but like, I hope this piece is a way for us to build connections as human beings, and a conversation is a great way for us to start building that connection. So let's speed up the video a little bit, because I know it might be a little bit boring watching me paint so slowly. This piece, I think I've spent around 3 hours. I think a lot of times when I'm doing a piece like this, the most time consuming part is the conceptualization of what I want to draw and the idea behind it. But once I have a good idea and I know I have a clear message, it's the piece kind of like paints itself, and like things just kind of rolls along and speeds up really quickly, and I don't really have to work as hard when I think there is a clear goal in mind. And this is obviously one of those pieces that I had a clear idea, message I want to convey, and how those how the painting will look like, and the piece is practically painting itself, and I'm just doing this a lot faster than I usually do. For the darker colors, I've decided to use some cobalt blue mixing of burnt umber to create the darker colors. Like I mentioned, sometimes using black can just be I feel like it's very intimidating, but at the same time, like, burnt umber is a little bit warmer color. Here I'm just using a color pencil to color in some of the highlights. You can see that on the side, one of the child is building with rocks as blocks as their play toy, and they also have a hammer, which normally you wouldn't give a child a hammer to play with, right? So I feel like it also speaks to like the environment that the child is exposed to and what is considered normal. So like, they might be using the hammer to break down bigger rocks so that they can have smaller rocks to build with, whereas this other child is playing with Lego and blocks. But I can imagine that there could be a world where these two children will meet and they'll have a conversation at some point, but they would ultimately all come from like the same I think they will all come with different ideas, but they all have the same creativity and curiosity that they grew up with, because that's what all children have, their sense of curiosity, and hopefully they won't grow up with that judgment that we ultimately get really jaded to over time. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me on this juxtaposition. Please playing with blocks. I hope you enjoy this art time lapse, because I certainly did enjoy drawing this piece very much. Well, bye for now. I'll see you next time in another art time lapse. Take care and stay creative. Bye for now.